Welcome to This Week in Combat Sports, where we're looking ahead to this weekend's big fights and some of the bigger news of the day. I'm Drew Goldfarb, joined by Rick Rockwell. Rick, let's start with UFC. After a week away, the UFC off to Stockholm, Sweden. Headline bout features the favored Alexander Gustafsson at minus 290, taking on Anthony Smith at plus 230. Break down this fight for us, and are there any other fights that might be worth a wager on this card this weekend?
Well, this fight in particular, the main event, it's going to be enjoyable to watch. But in terms of betting value, there's no betting value here. I mean, Gustafsson's a favorite for a reason. He's a better all-around fighter. Even though he does have his own deficiencies, Smith is not going to expose those deficiencies. Smith's best chance of winning is landing or catching Gustafsson with a massive shot, a haymaker or a Gustafsson coming in. But the thing, though, is he's not that kind of fighter. He is a smart fighter. He's a tactical fighter. He'll jab. He'll throw some combos. He's much slicker of a striker than Smith is, and he's better at takedowns. So he's got so many aspects of the fight game in his favor. If he gets in trouble when he's on his back foot a little bit more, or when he goes up against someone who's a much better fighter on the ground than he is, and he gets taken to the ground and then gets dominated. For Smith, though, I don't want to say he's a one-trick pony, but he's got more weaknesses than Gustafsson does. And with that said, I don't see Smith winning this fight. I don't see it happening at all. It'll be more luck than anything. I like him as a fighter. I think he's, this is his second tough fight in a row, and he's not afraid to fight anybody. But that doesn't mean you're going to win just because you have, the fearlessness to go inside the cage. All of them are fearless, in my opinion, to step inside the octagon. So the main event, I don't see any betting value. On the preliminary card of the event, there's a handful of fights that all have close betting odds. Some of them were even, minus 110, minus 110. There's a couple that was like minus 115, minus 105. So you've got very close fights competitively on paper, and then also with the odds makers, which means whoever you go with, you're going to have a good return on your investment, on your wager. And that's the kind of betting value you want to find if you don't know a lot about the fighters. Now, if you know about some fighters and you can find some odds that are like, oh, hey, look at this, this is great value, then you obviously want to go for that. For this card, though, there's not a lot of that, because I want to say the matchmakers for UFC did a pretty good job in terms of pitting a lot of the fighters who have strengths against other fighters who don't have the style to beat the first fighter, basically. This card's going to be okay. I don't think it's a great card. I think it'll be exciting to see him in Sweden. There's going to be some of Sweden's top fighters on this event. There's going to be a few fighters returning for the first time in a while. And then you got a bunch of new fighters coming in because they're going overseas, and they're going to bring some European fighters who haven't fought in the UFC yet making their debuts. So they got a mixture of everything. There's some intrigue, but in terms of betting value, there's only a handful of opportunities, and the main event fight is definitely not one of them.
Let's go over to boxing, where the IBF, WBA, and WBO heavyweight championships are on the line as the champion Anthony Joshua makes his North American debut against challenger Andy Ruiz Jr. This fight isn't the one that was originally slated, as Joshua's original opponent popped for PEDs, and now Joshua is favored at minus 2,100 odds. What interests you about this fight?
First of all, I think this fight's going to be tougher for Joshua, because I think Ruiz is going to pose more of a challenge to Joshua than his previous opponent. Ruiz is tough. He's got one loss, and it was a majority decision. And some people think he actually won that fight. He's never been knocked out. He's never been stopped. That's his only loss of his career. And Joshua said it himself, Ruiz has some good combinations. He's not afraid to come forward. He's not afraid to exchange punches. He's got some dangerous power, deceptive power. And to me, and even the promoter, Eddie Hearn, he is like, Joshua should be worried. Like, this is not going to be an easy fight for him. And they wanted an easier fight for him because of what Wilder just did in his last fight, winning in the first round knockout. And the whole goal is to get Joshua and Wilder to fight, unify all the titles, big, massive heavyweight battle, which everybody wants because that's what's best for the sport. But they tried to get 2 other fighters before Ruiz put his name on the dotted line. The other 2 fighters didn't want to take it on such short notice. Ruiz is like, give it to me. Ruiz fought in April. You know, he's turning around quickly because this is a huge opportunity. Even if he loses, if he puts on a great performance, he proves that he belongs in the upper echelon of the division. Now, if he goes out there and gets knocked out in the first or second round, then obviously that's not a good thing. So I'm looking forward to see how Joshua handles the toughness of Ruiz, and if Ruiz can have any success, especially if he gets inside on Joshua, and how long this fight's going to go.
So last question for you this week. With the odds as spread across as they are, because that's a massive difference in odds from one side to the other, what prop bet or prop bets do you like when you're looking at this fight?
Well, I just alluded to it, seeing how far the fight's going to go. Everybody wants to see Joshua. Well, I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of the Joshua proponents or even Joshua critics want to see Joshua win quickly to prove he's as good, if not better, than Wilder. He's got a collection of world titles, first of all. The guy's arguably the best heavyweight in the world. How that translates into when he fights, another champion, we'll see. So I want to see how far this fight goes. There was an over-under of 6.5 rounds. For me, I think it's going to go over because Ruiz has never been stopped before. And Joshua, his toughest fights like Klitschko and a couple other guys have all gone over 6.5 rounds. So even though he's only gone to the scorecards one time, Anthony Joshua, he's had 4 or 5 fights that have gone over 6.5 rounds, and those were all his toughest fights. I think Ruiz is going to be there. I think Ruiz was better than some of those previous opponents, not Klitschko, but some of the other guys. And I think this is going to go over that. So that's one of the bets that I'm looking at. And then so based on that mentality, we're either going to have a late round TKO for Joshua winning or a decision. So I'm looking at some prop bets like round betting where either A, you can get rounds 10 through 12 or rounds 7 through 9. And I'm also looking at the prop bet that asks if it'll go to a decision, if it'll go to the distance. I think those bets offer much better value than taking a straight up money line on who's going to win outright. I like Ruiz. I just don't think he's going to win this fight. Maybe if he had a full training camp, he'd have a better chance. Who knows? Maybe because he had a shorter training camp and Joshua hasn't prepared as much, he might have a better chance. We'll find out on Saturday at Madison Square Garden.
Rick Rockwell, thank you very much. Be sure to check out Rick's articles on boxing, MMA, and more online now at gamblingsites.org. And make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Odds On Favorites YouTube channel. I'm Drew Goldfarb. He's Rick Rockwell. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.